Facebook. Okay, we're live on Facebook. Welcome. Welcome to the Super Empowered Angels podcast and my YouTube channel, The Beauty of Chains, which is named after my book, my #1 bestseller book, The Beauty of Chains, the fun way for women to turn pain into power and purpose. And today's episode, we have a special guest, and you guys this is a big treat for us because she is an awesome leader. Tatiana Denford is our special guest today, and she is a novelist and a poet, and her current book, Conversation with Grief, was published in April of this year and has been reviewed incredibly well so far. It will be one of a series of 3 themed books of poetry and prose coming out this year. The next one will be on motherhood, and the third will be on love. Grief is a subject she started after the death of her grandmother during the start of the pandemic. I'm sorry about that. And it made her realize that grief is something that we need to learn about in order to understand how love and hope work. Grief isn't the absence of love, but the existence of it. And publishing it has empowered her to change her perspective about the moments in life and cause such upheaval. And her first book, Motherland, published in March 2020, is a historical fiction novel based on an epic true family secret, similar to The Light Between Oceans, and has been met with critical acclaim and was longlisted for the Reader's Digest Self-Published Awards. She also written for magazines such as Elle and Vogue. She writes on Medium. She hosts a YouTube show called The Craft and Business of Books that talks about the creative side as well as the business side of getting books out there. And she also do translation for frontline PBS news programs. She'd love to explore the topic of grief and how creativity enhances our understanding of it, as well as how self-publishing has taught her a lot about how to validate art without industry boundaries. Wow. Welcome, Tatiana.
Thank you for having me. This is wonderful.
Oh, you are so welcome. We are so blessed to have you.
Thank you.
So, tell me about your quest and your books, and you have a lot going on.
I do, yes. I've always loved writing. I think writing for me is a kind of way I understand the world and how things happen to me. And I have a natural curiosity with the world. And I think, writing empowers me. And, I think kind of telling their stories is more important now than ever. And, the industry can feel a little bit scary to people. And I think, I really kind of took it upon myself to learn how to self-publish in particular so that I could get my work out there without feeling like the doors were kind of always closing. And a lot of people feel frustrated with the industry sometimes because it's a hard business to be in, and it's very fickle, and sometimes people feel like there's a big wall in front of them, but I feel like there is a way to get your book on the shelf, you know, in a way that kind of makes you happy, rather than you feeling like somebody is kind of controlling how you publish your work. So that's why I got into self-publishing.
All right. So tell me about your first book.
So my first book, Motherland, it took me on and off about 4 years to write.
Okay.
And my children were young at the time. I have 3. And I remember I found out about a family secret that my parents found out about my maternal grandmother, so my mother's mother. And it was so wild. And the story about, there was a part of her life that nobody knew about. And it was so cinematic. It was like a movie, and all these kind of details kept coming out. And I thought, well, I really need to write this down. And I started writing this down, and it started becoming a book. And so I thought, I have to make this a book. I think a lot of people, a lot of immigrant children would connect to a story like that, you know. And I think it's really important for people to understand those stories and learn from them, because it's quite common that you grow up and your grandparents die, and you don't ask them questions that maybe you could have when they were alive, because that's living history. So I started writing it down, and it became this amazing labor of love. And a lot of agents were interested in it, but they wanted me to kind of change the story. And I thought to myself, I don't know if I can do that with this book, because it was based on a true story from my family and from my grandmother. So I didn't really want to change the story. And that's how I ended up kind of deciding to self-publish it. And loads of people have loved it, have passed it along to friends. And, you know, it makes me really proud that I managed to do that. So yeah, it was very difficult.
I get to check that out.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad that you insisted that that's the way the book is written, because if you change it, then it takes away the originality. And it's like every person has a story, and you never know whose life you're touching with that story.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and I think it kind of, for me anyway, it was an important book for me to write, because I'm writing it for myself and for my family. And, you know, and I love that a lot of people loved it. So it kind of spurred me on to writing more and more when that book came out, because as soon as that book came out, I published it in March of 2020. And then my grandmother ended up dying a month later. So it was like, you know, those chapters were kind of closed, but it really inspired me to then kind of do my next book, which is the one that just came out about grief, because
about grief.
And yeah, and that in particular, that was amazing for me to write, because it was an education for me about pain and about how to use that pain in order to connect with other people and the kind of grief that they experience. And especially in the last, I'd say, year and a half or so, because of the pandemic, a lot of people have been talking about grief. And I think it's kind of a helpful thing to learn how to deal with.
Yeah, so tell us more about your book.
So the second, grief. Yeah, so the second one, Conversation with Grief, came out a month ago. And oh no, was it a month ago? Gosh, no, it came out in April. And that was just a very different format, because obviously my first book was historical fiction, and this one is poetry and prose. And I found it a really interesting challenge to try and write moments that are really short and really concise, but also that feel really powerful as well. And it really resonated with people on a very different level. And I think, you know, what I love about it is that because it's small, you know, you can kind of, you can put it in your handbag, and you can kind of dip into and out of it if you want to, because you want to read something in particular, you know, because the book is filled not with just, grief isn't just depressing. It can also be really interesting, and really it can remind you of how much you loved someone, or how you hope for things to change in the future, or, we live with grief kind of like a friend, in a lot of ways, because it's there. Grief is present in your life all the time in lots of different ways. So I think that's what made me really happy writing something that was short and sweet, but powerful. Yeah.
Yeah. Very nice. I really appreciate what you do. So for people right now that are going through grief, what is the best advice you can give them before they can read your book?
I think the best advice that I've learned that has helped me about grief is that you have to let it in. And there are stages of grief that we all go through. There's the anger, there's the sadness, there's the frustration. There's guilt because you feel like you shouldn't be around when somebody else has died. And I think the most important thing is that you have to understand that grief shows up like a new friend, and you have no idea who this person is, and you will get frustrated with them, and you will find it comforting to be around them sometimes, and you will also find it incredibly sad. But you have to let it in. You have to invite it in. You have to live with it. You have to treat it like this strange person that just showed up and said, I'm here and you're going to have to learn from me. I think you have to live with it. You have to live through it, Yeah.
So while you're writing your book, so what are the challenges you faced to let other people that are thinking about writing books?
I think the challenges for me are trying to find time to write and find time to read, because those two things together are really important, because the more you allow yourself to read, the more you will then write. And I think that is the key that people don't understand. I mean, reading is still work. So what's really important is just carving out that time. So some of us have kids, some of us have different priorities, some of us have full-time jobs. It's important to set that time aside, whether it's an hour, half an hour, 4 hours a day. You have to just show up and sit in a chair and write, even if it's just 5 words or 5 pages. And it's really intimidating, because you think, oh, well, I have to be really good every time I sit down and write, but that's not true. I think people get intimidated because they compare themselves to other people in the industry, and you just think, but you have to write for yourself. You never write for the industry. You always write for yourself. That's the advice that I would give people writing, especially now. We live in an age where there are so many options with how to publish your work. You don't have to just go down one path and get an agent and go the traditional publishing route. There are so many other ways you can get started, even if you write on free platforms or if you write a blog. You just have to keep that going, and then it will manifest into something bigger over time.
Yes. What I did with my book was, when I didn't have a lot of time, and then when I was kayaking, that's when I am more creative, but I usually don't have a book or a notebook or a pen. So, but I always have my phone with me. I put it in the wet bag, so it's protected. And once I settled in the middle of the lake, I would grab my phone, and like whatever comes up, like I'm being creative and I can think of a lot of things, I would record it on my phone, just speak and like tell my story. And then when I get home, I use my Google typing, voice typing. So I play it and it types for me. So that made it a lot easier. So.
I love that. And also, like, you're getting into a good habit of doing that, which is great. And I think once it takes 2 weeks to get into some kind of routine or a rhythm or a habit. And I think if whatever that is, if somebody's going to be creative or carve out that time, whether it's using your phone or a notepad or going out for walks, or like you said, kayaking, whatever it takes to get into that headspace and into that rhythm, I think it's great. And then it starts coming out easier. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it's just getting started. Once you get started, 15 minutes later, you don't want to quit. Like that happens a lot. Something like, okay, I'll just do this for 30 minutes. No, yeah, more. And then it's like, I wake up, I do that, and I'm like, I gonna get breakfast, so I'll just do this for 30 minutes. And like, more, it's like, it's just a download that like more that you have to write. And so you don't want to quit. And I'm like, okay, I'll just eat breakfast later.
Yeah, exactly. And then you forget, and then you blink and it's 2 hours later. You think, well, what have I been doing?
Yeah, you get the whole chapter.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you could step into my shoes, what would you have asked yourself that I have not asked you?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I would probably ask, like, I would probably look back and say, like, what have I learned kind of over the process, over the last, I've been writing on and off for years, like what has helped me with my writing process as I kind of get older. And I think the most important thing is, like I said before, and I keep reminding myself of this, is that, you know, we have one life, we have to kind of use it wisely and use our time wisely, like, you know, and especially when you're creative, you always, you know, especially with social media, and you see all these people getting awards, and there are people going on book tours, and then you see New York Times bestseller lists, and it's really difficult because you start comparing yourself. It's really normal, whether you're a writer, musician, whatever it is you do in the creative field. It's really difficult not to feel like your talents are lacking because somebody else is winning by whatever, you know, way they are, because you think it's more validating to get something like awards and spreads in magazines. But I think the most important thing now, looking back, is you always have to keep yourself in mind rather than the industry. You can't write for anybody else. You can't try and write beach fiction if that's not what you want to do, but you try and write it because you think that that's going to sell, or that's going to give you thousands of dollars, which is ultimately damaging to what you're trying to create. And I think having that mindset is really healthy. And I only learned that with trial and error over the years. I didn't start by doing that. I started by trying to emulate other writers and going, oh, well, maybe I can do it this way. Maybe I can do it this way. And I think over time, you just start finding your own voice. And I think that's very important. And also, it makes you not only authentic, but then you give off this energy where people start trusting you for the specific thing that you do. People don't come to me. People don't come to me because they think I'm going to be the next big erotica writer, or I'm, you know, they know that they're going to come to me for a very specific type of writing, you know, whether it's a novel or whether it's poetry. It's, you know, you start to learn that over the years. But I would say, like, that's the most important thing I probably have learned for myself. And I think I try to say that to other people. And like, you just have to write because you love it, not because anybody else is going to, you know, give you awards.
Same here. Mine, what really inspired me is I know that my story will help others. I'm not pleasing everybody, but those just few percent that could relate to my story and are feeling stuck and want to move on. And I would like to empower them. That's why I wrote the book.
Yeah.
So.
And that's really important. And I think your legacy is always how you make people feel. You can talk a big game and you can write all these amazing books, but ultimately people are going to walk away thinking, wow, that author made me feel something really interesting. Or as a person, that person made me feel really good, or I really connected to that person. And I think that's your reputation ultimately. And I think I try and do that with my writing, you know, because if it makes me happy, it makes me feel like I'm a really interested and kind of, you know, honest and good person, then other people will feel like they might feel like that for a moment, you know? I don't know. Hopefully, who knows? I try my best.
Well, that's all we can do.
Yeah, that's true.
That's all we can give what we have. So
exactly.
So where are the listeners can connect with you online, and what are you offering?
So I am, okay, so my social media pages are, I'm on Twitter under Tatiana Writes, so Writes. I'm also on Instagram with the same handle, Tatiana Writes. I have a website, tatianadenford.com. It has all the links to where you can buy my books. And it also has where you can, it has my blog, and actually I'm offering to people the ability to sign up for 2 emails a week. It's free. It's not a Patreon. You don't have to pay for it. It's just extra writing that I do. And it just kind of shows people, what my writing is like. And I also host a show called The Craft and Business of Books. It's on YouTube, and it basically tries to explain to people how to go the traditional route of publishing or self-publishing, the behind the scenes. I interview lots of different people in the industry, like agents, editors, publicists, authors, people who have kind of gone lots of different places with their work within the industry. And I think it's really helpful for people who just want to see what the industry is like, really, kind of lifting the veil. So I'm kind of everywhere, I guess, but maybe that's really helpful. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, thank you so much for being our special guest today, and I will put your link below on the description, and I will send you the copy so you can continue to share this.
Perfect. Thank you so much. It's been so much fun. I loved it.
Yes, I love having you here. So have a great day, the rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
You are welcome. Bye.
Bye.